my community advisory board, the way I chose to do this a handful of years ago, was to have a board for about an 18-month term. So this board will finish when I finish, my last board and I together. And they usually have some project, and I've done different projects at different times with different boards. And this particular board is focusing on a sentinel review of a law enforcement fatal shooting of a community member, and a case that I chose not to file on. So it's also, the sentinel review is also looks at my actions, why I did or did not do something in that particular case. So that one is a lot to bite off, but I've got a little bit of material here I wanted to just kind of roll through. So these two individuals are neighborhood leaders, and they both agreed to serve on my board. One of them, Mr. Tyson, agreed. He asked if he could come back to the present one that I have right now. So he has been really tremendous, and their job is simply to advise me on matters that really impact the community. And so one of the things that I take from this board is a pretty open dialogue. That we have ground rules about hearing each other and listening, and making sure that the dialogue remains robust. The mission statement of crime strategies is to focus on data analysis, so that we can engage together in violence reduction initiatives, community partnerships, and to improve prosecution and build public trust and transparency. It's been critical for me, and it's been a very useful tool. I'm going to go back to some data that I showed my community advisory board, and had them help me work through one of the problems that I showed them. This was, right now, what you're looking at is a slide on the racial breakdown of drug cases that were brought into my office for prosecution. And what I'd like to point out is the census data, that's what you see in red, shows you what the population demographics look like in this particular part of my jurisdiction. And then we went back and pulled drug cases over a 5-year period. So we had a strong data set to look at. But this shows you the number of people in racial demographics, the folks that were brought to me and then charged for drug crimes. And this is a problem. This is just a problem. When 81 to 85% of individuals are Black people, not just people of color, but Black people, but they only make up under 40% of the population, one has to wonder why we would have that imbalance, in charging. When I do this presentation other places, I ask people to show hands, how many people know a white drug dealer? I got to raise my hand on that, what I'm saying is about drugs, they are used by all racial demographics. Drug sales are by all racial demographics, and usually by now, all types of drugs. So this was really problematic data for me, and I was looking for a way to address it and engage my community advisory board to help me. We went in further and showed my community advisory board how poorly my office was actually handling these, racially imbalanced cases that we received. Very few of them ended up going to drug court. The vast majority of them were being dismissed. So my office did a really poor job, really, in filing these cases and then handling them in the system. And I'm going to flip on and show you, one of the misnomers that I have had as a prosecutor is that before I did this analysis, if you had said, is there a very direct connection between drugs and violence? I would have said yes. And drugs and weapons cases, or, people possessing weapons, I would have said yes, of course. But we did, again, my data analyst did a great dive here on this. And what we learned was that actually wasn't true. It's something we say in law enforcement. And so we say it so often we believe it, but my data doesn't lie. And so my data told me that only just over 13% of all those cases, drug cases, had some kind of violence nexus or weapons charge. So, and then we, our 28% was of our sampled defendants overall had some kind of violent history or weapons case. And bluntly, that was surprising. I thought it would be much higher, especially when police explained they weren't trying to target one part of my city where most minorities live. They were trying to target areas where most violence occurs. And so these numbers were problematic. So my community advisory board, that last one, helped me come up with a new policy. And that policy was, when drug cases are referred to my office by this particular police division, it had to come with one or two things. One, it had to come with a nexus to violence. That means, was the suspect themselves dangerous? What do we know about that suspect? What evidence supports this? So you can't just assert it. You have to prove it to me and show it to me that it is a legitimate violence nexus. That may be shown through, a variety of different methods. It doesn't have to be prior charges. It could be prior arrest at a lot of scenes as a victim of crime, of shootings, and at a lot of other scenes. Or secondly, if not a nexus to violence, is there a community concern that's documented? Meaning, do I have neighborhood leaders that are saying, man, this drug dealer rolled in on our block and destroyed the tranquility of the entire block. It's dangerous. The whole complexity of the block has changed with this individual on the block. Will you do something about it? And of course, those are going to be cases that I take. Those are the cases that I want. But it should also demonstrate that these are the cases that do demonstrate when there is a nexus. Perhaps we can have a better outcome by handling that prosecution differently. What more do I know? Can I be more successful with that drug prosecution? Because now I am delivering a better case to the court. I'm able to defend it better, and hopefully I'm able to give my community some relief without adding a whole lot more racial animus in my community. So again, it was my community advisory board that helped me craft this policy after we kept digging into the data. One of the ways they did that was they would keep sending me back with more questions, and I needed to do more data pulls so that I could answer their questions. And I feel much more comfortable now as a prosecutor that I am carrying the right cases and I'm carrying them in the right way. So for me, this board it's been profoundly helpful. It makes me serve my community in a way that is more legitimate, and it's more thoughtful. And it also improves the overall relationship that I have with my community as a whole. Now, on this drug policy, you probably won't be surprised to learn that the police were in no way fans of this new policy. And so I still receive a lot of those drug cases. They still come to me because police were pretty upset about it, even though we really did work hard bringing them to the table and talking to them, showing them the data.
That's left.
But it didn't work out terribly well from that vantage point. So another one of the issues that is pretty important in my community is fatal shootings by police officers. Of course, everyone's community is that brings people into your system in a whole different way. And so I'm always trying to find ways where I can make a better impact on this particular issue. Of course, you know, sometimes, I mean, you can issue a charge that makes a great impact. I did issue a charge against a police officer in the year 2020. And it took us a while to get that case to conviction, but the police officer was convicted for killing an unarmed Black man. And it had, that has had a big impact overall on my community. However, I felt like that, you know, that's one prosecution, and what more could I do? So we looked at one officer who's had a series of events, and you know, we are studying one of those events from a sentinel review standpoint. What more could we learn about how this officer and this community member came together, you know, and what caused the two of them to meet? What about their two backgrounds that caused them to meet in the way they met? And so right now we are in the middle of gathering information, doing witness interviews, and studying that case that I chose not to prosecute. And but we're looking at it hopefully from a much greater perspective. And we will issue a report at the end of our time together, and hopefully learn something that my community will benefit from, and potentially my police department could benefit from.